For more Microsoft webcasts, please go to microsoft.com/webcasts. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to welcome you to our TechNet webcast entitled Upgrading and Migrating to Office SharePoint Server 2007. I would like to introduce today's presenter, Blaine Barton. Blaine is a TechNet presenter for the Microsoft Corporation. Blaine, you now have the floor.
Well, thank you, Craig. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Upgrading and Migrating to Office SharePoint Server 2007. Once again, great intro, Craig. I'm Blaine Barton. I'm a Senior IT Pro Evangelist out of the Gulf States region. I actually reside down here in Florida. We got a lot to cover today. When we look at, even as we go back into upgrade migration and some of the processes around that, there's just a lot that we need to talk about today as far as upgrading from SharePoint 2003 to 2007, and then migrating those farms and upgrading your current infrastructure. So we're gonna dive right into it today. So what we're going to cover is the first part in particular. I mean, we look at the scenario. I mean, there's just way too many disparate, sites with incompatible content management. We know that, right? And collaboration and administrative models. Also, there are web-based line of business applications that require separate logons due to different security models that are difficult to use, and especially due to different user interfaces that lack really a lot of flexibility for the enhancement due to custom coding. So Microsoft SharePoint products and technologies really provide a single, nice, unified, enterprise-ready solution to boost organizational effectiveness by streaming business processes and making information sharing intuitive and easy and straightforward, and really using through the best integration of the familiar desktop applications and tools that we use today within SharePoint 2003. And in addition to controlling and reusing content while reducing information management risk, SharePoint enables fast and more insightful decision making. So we're going to talk a lot more about that. Now, one of the questions that I get when I do talk about SharePoint, many companies are already using SharePoint products and technologies today. It used to be the question was, why should I use SharePoint, technologies? That used to be the question. Now it's why should I upgrade to the new version, right? And that's a big question in people's minds. Is if I've got something that's working today and it's not broken, why would I move to Microsoft Office SharePoint Server 2007? So in this session, we're going to cover how SharePoint products and technologies have evolved and the advantages offered with the new release of Windows SharePoint Services 3.0 and the new Office SharePoint Server 2007. I'll also get into, once you've decided to upgrade, you have several options and how you're going to carry out the upgrade process. We're going to explain these upgrade alternatives along with the advantages and disadvantages of each. And then with each upgrade, there's obviously different approaches we can take and additional considerations. This includes how to handle customizations and how to address the upgrade if you use technologies like shared services. So we're going to address these concerns. I'm going to give you possible solutions here, and in addition to this, I'm going to give you tips for pre-upgrade and post-upgrade steps, and we'll talk about some best practices. As with most TechNet sessions, it is kind of nice to have a few prerequisites, but you know what? I'm just glad you're here. That you've tuned in today, and I always make a promise to my attendees, and that is, if you're tuning in today, hopefully at the end of this webcast, you'll walk away with at least learning one thing. So thanks again for tuning in. It's nice to have a basic understanding of SharePoint Services version 2.0. I know with 3.0 is out, and also having a little bit of knowledge around. Since we're going to be introducing and talking about Windows SharePoint Services 3.0, it's nice to have a basic understanding of 2.0. And also some background on SharePoint Portal Server 2003 is also helpful. And then, of course, having a solid understanding of how we do Windows Server 2003 administration. As there's a lot of areas that we'll discuss that pertain to server administration in general. The first place to start is I put in a website link here for you. This is up on Microsoft.com. It's Microsoft Office SharePoint Server 2007. There's a lot of information right here in this portal. You can go up, get the benefits, compare the features, get some information on a demo copy. There's just a whole lot of information on our website, so you'll definitely want to check that out at your leisure. So I'm going to go ahead and go right into the agenda here. We're going to start out with this session by outlining the advantages of upgrading to the newest release of Windows SharePoint Services and to the new Office SharePoint Server 2007. And after showing how SharePoint products and these technologies have really progressed, we'll look at some pre-upgrade steps and some things you can take as food for thought when you're moving from 2003 to 2007. And after you perform the pre-upgrade steps, you'll need to determine which upgrade approach would best work for you and your infrastructure and of course your organization. So whether you decide to perform an in-place upgrade, what we refer to as a gradual upgrade, or a content database migration, I'll be here to kind of alert you to some of the advantages and disadvantages of each approach. And then the last one is really, looking at some additional considerations that need to be addressed before you make that final decision about your upgrade route. And we'll let you know during the webcast here how to search and shared services and how they're affected by the upgrade. And if you have a heavily customized SharePoint deployment, I'll also kind of outline some of the possible areas of conflict, during the upgrade, things to look for, and ways to address some of these conflicts. So SharePoint products and technologies have really progressed in several stages over the past years. So there is a roadmap, if you will, and of course SharePoint was introduced in 2001 with SharePoint Team Services version 1.0 and SharePoint Portal Server 2001. In 2003, Microsoft came out with the newer version of Windows SharePoint Services and SharePoint Portal Server. And in addition, organizations could really integrate Microsoft Content Management Server 2002 as well with SharePoint Services and Office SharePoint Portal Server 2003. And with this solution, Windows, the SharePoint Services and the Portal Server really did a fine job of providing that collaboration and intranet portal site features. Things like search, alerts, if you will, notifications, and document versioning that you could use to help organize and share and find information and important information located throughout your organization. And also with Content Management Server around that time, it really offered a lot of rich web content management features such as authoring and presentation templates, content scheduling and workflow, and dynamic page assembly. So there was a lot there that we brought into the picture there. I think I just moved up a slide there. I want to actually go up. So in 2000, and once again, 2003 SharePoint Portal Server 2003 and SharePoint Services 2.0 was introduced. And now, with the newest release of SharePoint technology, we wanted to really combine all the necessary features into a single solution. And this was accomplished through version 3 of SharePoint, the SharePoint Server, or what we refer to as WSS, and the replacement of SharePoint Portal Server 2003 with the new Microsoft Office SharePoint Server 2007. And these releases were developed with some goals in mind. I mean, the dev teams really had it laid out. First, they really wanted to provide a clean upgrade from version 2 to version 3.0 for WSS. And in addition to this, user impact was minimized by reducing outage duration or limiting the number of users affected by an outage. Also, our dev teams and Microsoft in general, we really wanted to ensure that the administrators were able to upgrade easily, making things straightforward. Resource options have been provided to really enable the upgrade of existing farms and to support migrating to new farms. Also, we really wanted to provide an upgrade approach that would allow administrators to upgrade a majority of their customizations. And then the final goal there was really, with SharePoint 2007, was really designed to provide a consistent user interface. So with a lot of these goals in mind, let's go over why you should upgrade Office SharePoint Server 2007 and Windows SharePoint Services version 3.0. So you kind of ask yourself, why upgrade? I mean, we get this a lot. If something's working for an organization, what makes them move to the new product? Most of the time, it's something they need in a total cost of ownership perspective, or in a rich feature-based perspective, or they have hardware that they want to support it takes advantage of the the software innovation and technologies, but you really got to go back and ask yourself, why would I want to upgrade? And with Microsoft SharePoint products and technologies, really provide, once again, a single, unified, enterprise-ready solution to help you boost your organizational effectiveness. And you could do this with the product by really streamlining your business processes and making information sharing intuitive and easy through best integration with familiar desktop applications and tools. So in addition to the controlling and reusing content while reducing information management risk, of course, you want to take that into consideration. SharePoint really enables faster and more insightful decision making. So when we look at Office SharePoint Server 2007, it's really built on an open, scalable architecture that supports the web services and interoperability standards, including XML and SOAP, the Simple Object Access Protocol. So the server has rich open application programmability interfaces and event handlers for lists and documents. And these features provide integration with existing systems and the flexibility to incorporate new non-Microsoft IT investments in your infrastructure. So that's the first one, right, is the infrastructure consolidation, which allows you and your infrastructure for co-hosting corporate and host header mode sites in the same farm that you have set up with SharePoint. Also, each portal becomes a site collection, which really results in fewer databases that you have to manage. The next thing is with SharePoint, it comes out of the box with the utility to improve data protection. The recycling bin, it might not sound like a big deal, but the recycling bin allows for easy data retrieval now if necessary. So you can pull things out of the recycling bin. I'm going to show you that in a demo coming up. Then we also have smigrate.exe. It's a Microsoft Windows SharePoint Services utility that can be used to back up and restore a website on a server running Windows SharePoint services. Also, this smigrate.executable utility is used when migrating SharePoint Team Services deployments to Windows SharePoint services. Also, SharePoint 2007 adds a new command line ability to import and export. And the utility that we use is the smigrate, and the syntax command, just in case you're interested, is stsadm, which is the whole SharePoint Team Services administrative with a -0 import export on the command line, which will simply run the process for administrators. So once again, there's a great addition to backing up and restoring a website while running Windows SharePoint services. Another one that's huge is all around search and search scalability. You know that the search scalability in the SharePoint 2007 has increased by 32-fold. So what that means is, in addition, there are now a common Office Server 2007 and Windows SharePoint Services search engine. And there's also a change log that allows for incremental propagation of all your search indexes, if you will. So it's huge when we talk about the capabilities that we've made increased by 32-fold, if you will. Lifecycle management is also a big thing. In order to keep SharePoint sites current and relevant, you as admins need to provide effective lifecycle management. So with SharePoint 2007, it assists in this task by allowing the site collection owner to be updatable by the user. So as well as the addition of confirmation, which we have in 2003, we have auto deletion and the deleting the events as we capture the deletes. So there's lots on lifecycle management. Another one is built-in page reghosting, which fixes broken pages, so that's been added in. And the Windows SharePoint Services 3.0 environment does provide a lot more improved experience for both users and administrators. And we also have ASP.NET 2.0 integration. We've got master pages and new features that allow for improved customizations, if you will. Some of these new features are things like blogs. I mean, a lot of us have blogs now these days. Wikis, Real Simple Syndicate, RSS feeds, workflows, inbound email, and events. There's also business data integration with things like Excel Server and InfoPath forms, and allowing greater ease of administration and a better user experience. So all of these things have been added in. So we are going to kind of reference the ghosting process throughout this session. So let's first take a look at what's ghosting, what does ghosting mean, and how has it changed with WSS version 3.0. When we look at ghosting, site definition files are cached in memory on the server at process startup of Microsoft IIS. So we rely upon IIS. So when I go into setting up the server to migrate from SharePoint 2003 to 2007, I'm going to go through and show you a couple things that I've learned as best practices that aren't necessarily in the demo script here that you want to just take a look at. So we're going to cover those. And when we do take a look at improving the scalability and performance, we can do this by reducing unnecessary data storage or retrieval and by allowing uncustomized pages to be used across sites. So the information contained in these files is pulled from the cache at runtime. And these pages and these list schemas are read from the site definition files, but appear to be actual files within the site. So which is why these files are referenced as ghosted. So ghosted pages are therefore pages who actually content does not reside in the database, but rather on the disk. Right. So although a row for each page can be found in a database containing a column value that points to a page source in the file system. So for instance, new web part pages are ghosted. So that's a big piece. Now when we look at integrating and looking at moving over information from a 2.0 farm to 3.0 farm, when website pages are customized, excluding browser-based customizations such as modifications to web parts, these pages become unghosted and their content is stored in the database. So prior to WSS 3.0, there wasn't a native means for reghosting pages. And in addition, uploading your .aspx files were considered unghosted automatically. So when we look at WSS 3.0, it allows for this automatic reghosting, which helps increase your scalability and performance while allowing all site data to be stored together. Before you can begin upgrading your farm, there are some steps you should really take and perform on this system. So let's take a look at a couple of those. And I'm going to show you this in the demo coming up. The first one is the Windows Workflow Foundation. So you want to make sure your farm is upgraded to SharePoint. If you're running SharePoint 2003, make sure it's upgraded to Service Pack 2. This is a required upgrade. Then when we talk about Windows Workflow Foundation, virtually all software used in enterprises today has the same goal, right? We all have the same goal when we're virtually talking about software in the enterprise. Supporting business processes is one of them, and a big one. So whether the processes are entirely automated or rely on people to initiate the process, or do things like approve documents during the process or the process that it uses, and resolve any exceptional situations that arise. A discrete series of steps known as workflow can be defined. So with this workflow, it describes the activities of what people and what what's being done to this involved in this workflow process. So with Windows Workflow Foundation, we provide a common framework for building workflows into Microsoft Windows applications, whether those workflows coordinate interaction among software or interaction among people, or a combination of both. Another big piece is when we install the Windows Workflow Foundation is to be able to install and have installed ASP.NET 2.0. So we definitely also want to have that on the system. Since WSS runs on the ASP.NET 2.0 platform, this needs to be installed for the web parts to work correctly. And then there's also, you definitely want to do a backup and test a full backup of your data within SQL Server, and I'll show you how to do that. That's another best practice, is backing up your data before you're thinking about doing the migration. And after you have Windows Workflow Foundation and ASP.NET 2.0, you'll want to go ahead and run this backup. So the last thing you want to do is, now this can be confusing in the webcast. I want to make this clear that I'm going to talk about two types of upgrades in the scenario going forward. The first upgrade in the first demo I'm going to do is I'm going to be doing some prerequisites, pre-upgrade tasks that you see on this list. which I'll be upgrading from SharePoint Portal Server 2003 to Office SharePoint Portal Server 2007. So I want to make that clear. That's the first upgrade I'm going to do. The other upgrade that I'll be talking and referencing later on in the webcast is once I'm on the SharePoint 2007, the upgrades and migration to my farms within that product. So don't be confused when I talk about the first part here about upgrading. I'm talking about going from 2003 to 2007, and the second part series in the webcast today will be talking about simply migrating your farms and making configuration and customization changes. So another pre-upgrade tool you want to run is this, what we refer to as the scan tool, which is available, and you must use the scan on your sites before performing the upgrade. If you have not run the tool and you attempt to run setup and upgrade your environment, setup will exit and prompt you to run the tool. So there is some nice self-help there. If you forget something, it does a pretty good job. It stops the installation. It tells you what you need to do, whether you need to install IIS and have ASP.NET and the web server extensions installed, which I'll talk about, or if you don't have the workflow foundation installed, it'll pop up a nastygram and it'll tell you what you need to go fix or implement. So when we're talking about the scan tool, it also can identify the existence of any site templates they have customized in a particular site. And with this information, you can verify the customizations again after the upgrade. You'll also be alerted to the existence of custom web parts, which allow you as administrators of your SharePoint site to plan for these parts to be either rebuilt or redeployed after the upgrade if need be. Also, there may be the existence of orphaned objects, and they'll also be identified with this scan tool. So orphaned objects can be list items or lists in general, documents, websites, site collections that exist but are not really associated with any particular site. So because orphaned objects do not work in the old version, they'll also won't work after the upgrade. So if you perform an in-place upgrade, the orphaned items will still exist but won't work. Right? If you perform a gradual upgrade, which I'm going to be doing in the demo, orphaned items will not be copied to the new site. Therefore, it's really recommended that you clean up any orphaned objects before upgrading your environment. And along with identifying the possible issues with the upgrade, the pre-upgrade scan can give you a lot of useful information about how to approach your upgrade, which would include things like, what type of upgrade do I want to perform, or whether to upgrade some or all of my site collections that contain customized sites, and which sites may need to have customizations reapplied or redone after the upgrade that may take longer than others in the review stage. So now let's just go ahead and take a look at a demo. I'm going to switch over to my desktop here and run a couple of demos. The first thing I'm going to do is performing the pre-upgrade steps. So I'm going to go to my my desktop here. So a couple things that I wanted to cover. First of all, I want to let you know in my environment that I do have the SQL Server installed. I've got SharePoint 2003 installed. And I want to go and just kind of show you what's going on with the environment. So I'm going to go ahead and open up the Start menu here and just show you under all programs. You'll notice I got SQL Server installed here. I also have my SharePoint Portal Server 2003 installed. I also, if I go into Control Panel and I go into Add Remove Programs, just kind of want to show you what the list is that I have here. I have the Microsoft .NET Framework 2.0 installed. And also some Office 2003 web components. So these are the things that you would have installed, as well as maybe SharePoint or WSS 2.0 down here. But there are a couple of things that you need to be particularly aware of when you're moving from SharePoint 2003 to 2007. The first one that you want to make sure, and this is not in my demo script, this is just something that I learned going through the process of doing a migration, is manage. When you go into manage your server, under server roles, and you go to add or remove a role, we're just going to go through here and run this. I want to show you at the list here. Is making sure that first of all IIS is installed. That's mandatory. The second thing is making sure that you have your web server extensions installed through the interface by the configure your server wizard. It's kind of nice though in the dialog when you're installing or upgrading to 2007, it's going to give you, once again, a pop-up dialog that says that no, you don't have ASP.NET running or that you don't have IIS installed. This needs to be set to yes, okay? And you just drive through here, make sure that you have your original media, your i386 directory of your server for Windows Server 2003 available. It may ask for that. But you want to make sure this is yes and not no. If this is no, you'll get a dialog when you're going through setup that says you need to go in and actually enable that. So that's another thing that you just want to make sure that you have set up appropriately. And then there's also the next thing we'll do, and it would tell you during the installation as well, is being able to install this Windows Workflow Foundation. So we're going to go ahead and it's just going to ask you if you have any previous versions of the Workflow Foundation that you want to go ahead and remove those. And I'll go ahead and I'll let you read. I'll go ahead and let you read through this for a little bit here. Okay, that's enough. We'll go ahead and install this. So before you can begin the upgrade, you need to perform a lot of these pre-upgrade steps. You have to install the latest SQL Server 2005, ASP.NET 2.0, and they've already, as you can see, been installed here. You'll also need to, now as we mentioned, most software in the enterprise exists to support business processes, and so that's why we're doing the Windows Workflow Foundation. It's a series of steps known as workflow that can be really defined in these processes. And the purpose we're doing this is to really provide you a common framework for building workflows and Microsoft Windows applications. So naturally, a collaborative suite like SharePoint would be able to use this foundation to better meet the needs of your organization. So I'm going to go ahead and say OK here to that dialog. So the next thing I want to kind of cover is going in and running setup off of the CD. Now, before I do that, there was one other best practice that I wanted to talk about, and that is, and it was mentioned in the slide work, is being able to back up that database. So in SQL Server. So I'm just going to go ahead and log on to SQL Server Management Studio, and I'm going to go into my database. And it's going to be this fps01 config.db, and I'm just going to go in there and I'm going to go to backup database under tasks, and as you can see here, I'm going to do a full backup of the database just to make sure that I have everything backed up prior to going through the migration and upgrade. So I'm going to go ahead and run through this. A very small database, you can see. The backup database is now completed successfully, so that's another best practice. So go ahead and back that up. So the next thing is, and this is also interesting, when you want to go and upgrade to Office SharePoint Server 2007, that you actually have to have the media to do that. I had to search through some of my TechNet CDs to find a copy of it, but I did find a copy of SharePoint. I'm going to go into that area right now. So as you can see on this on the TechNet subscription that I have beta copies of all of the products that are under development. So I know a SharePoint Server 2007 is out there. I'm using beta 2 for my demonstrations today, but I'll go ahead and it's now time to open this up. We're going to drill down into the x86 directory within SharePoint, and here's all the different files for Office SharePoint Server 2007. Down here is the infamous setup executable, so we'll go ahead and double click on that. You also have to have a product key. This is the product key that I'll be using is for the beta 2 product. So you would also have a key within your TechNet subscription to use for this. So a good way to do this is a way that I'm doing it now in Virtual PC. I'm using Vista, Vista Ultimate with Virtual PC 2007 beta during this live meeting broadcast. And so one thing you could do is you could go and you could create an ISO file of your current production environment, and then bring that ISO file into a virtual PC or virtual server of your choice. Take your choice, and then do the upgrade. Have the TechNet, if you're a TechNet subscriber, which I hope you are, you'll have a copy of the SharePoint Server 2007, and you can put that in the tray, capture the CD-ROM, and do exactly what I'm doing today, just to get an idea of what it would look like prior to actually going into your production environment and pushing the magic button. So there's some food for thought. Virtualization is awesome. It really saves a lot of time. I like the undo changes and go back to where you started, so you can go and kind of go in baby steps and test along the way. So just an idea for you, throwing that out. I'll give you just a little bit of time to read the license terms here. Okay. You're all speed readers, right? This is what you're going to see. So I now have the ability to go in and upgrade the earlier version of SharePoint 2003, and there are some different areas that we want to cover here. So first of all, the first one here is setup will automatically detect any of the previous versions you have in SharePoint. It will display upgrade options. Your first option here is the automated in place option. And yeah, this option is, when it's selected, all the websites and databases will be upgraded, and the process will continue until it's complete. It's the best for installations with few databases and less than, say, 30 gigabytes of content. There's also do not upgrade at this time. You also have the option to do this particular, not perform the upgrade in this case. The new version would be installed alongside the existing product and can run without affecting the older installation of SharePoint 2003. You can upgrade it at a later time using the central administration pages. So that's basically that radio button there. When you click that for do not upgrade at this time, it's not going to upgrade 2003 to 2007. We're going to basically be running side by side. Then the last one here in the top of the list, which is the one I'm going to check, is the final option for the gradual upgrade. So this will allow your existing installation to function and enable you as the administrator to upgrade websites in batches. A gradual upgrade is really the best for large installations where websites have been extensively customized. So now once we go ahead and check yes, perform a gradual upgrade, we're going to look for server types. The first one here is, if we choose the complete option, we'll be able to add servers to and from a SharePoint farm, which is something that we'll definitely want to do. The next one in the list here is a web front end. So if we check this option, we'll only install components required to render content to users. So with this option, you can add servers to and from a SharePoint farm as well. And then finally, there's the standalone option here. So by choosing standalone, all the components will be installed on a single computer, including the desktop database engine. So you would not want to choose this option if you're using SQL 2000 or 2005, in which we are. So unlike the other two options, when you choose a standalone, you can't add servers to create a SharePoint farm. So I'm going to go ahead, definitely take complete and install all components, because I want to add servers to and from my SharePoint farm. File locations is going to be program files, Microsoft Office servers. So we'll go ahead, making sure that yes, perform a gradual upgrade. We'll go ahead and hit upgrade here. And as the upgrade process runs, it will upgrade to any data specific to that server itself. So first, the upgrade process creates an Office SharePoint Server 2007 web application to host SharePoint Central Administration, and then it creates the Central Administration site. Then the upgrade process creates a new configuration database to store configuration data for Office SharePoint Server 2007. Configuration data from the SharePoint Portal Server 2003 configuration database is copied into the new database. And there's also single sign-on, which is upgraded as well. A new Office SharePoint 2007 is basically, it's registered in order to talk to older single sign-on databases. Then once again, after the Office SharePoint Server 2007 has been installed to the first front-end web server, as you can see here, I have one standalone server running here. Then you would install it on all the other servers in the server farm. If the environment uses shared services, the upgrade process upgrades user profiles and search data specific to the portal site that was selected. And so once you, the administrator, selects a virtual server to upgrade, and it specifies the target web application. So the upgrade process creates the target web application and adds any web parts deployed by SharePoint 2003 virtual server to the new web application. Also, content databases are upgraded differently. A new temporary database is created during the upgrade process that you see here for each content database that exists in V2. So the upgrade process copies the site list from SharePoint Portal Server 2003 into the new environment. So after we select the site collections to upgrade, the upgrade process copies the data from those sites into a temp content database and upgrades those sites in that temp content database. So each site in the temporary is temporary unavailable while being copied into the temporary content database. Now, once the content has been upgraded, the upgrade process moves the data to the Office SharePoint Server 2007 content database, and then what it does is it deletes the temporary content database. So I look at it kind of as a cache or swapping ground for your content database. Builds a temp, copies it over to this temp space, moves the data from Office 2000 search to the content database, and then once it moves everything over from 2003, then deletes the temp content database. At the end of the upgrade process, SharePoint Portal Server 2003 and SharePoint Portal Server 2007 are both running and available. Once the installation is finished, on your first front-end web server, you will then be able to install and configure Office SharePoint Server 2007 on other front-end web servers in your farm. We're going to be returning back to this. This takes about 6 or 7 minutes to actually run through off of this DVD. So I'm going to go back to some slide work, and I'm going to come back to a demo. So once again, I covered installing the prerequisites. Time for a little sip of water. Start to stumble over my tongue. Is Workflow Foundation, going in and checking manage the rules of the server and checking and making sure IIS is installed, ASP.NET, and then doing a backup in the SQL database 2005, and then we kicked off the upgrade. So now what I want to do is talk a little bit more about approaching the upgrade, right? So now, I mean, this is where I told you earlier at the beginning of the webcast, there's two type scenario of upgrading that I'm covering today. One is going from SharePoint 2003 to 2007, and I did a gradual upgrade so that I could basically have those side by side, because I really don't want to go full-blown, full in-place upgrade over the top. I want to make sure that things are working properly, and that's why I picked the gradual upgrade. I can still work with SharePoint 2003. I can now work with SharePoint 2007. I can slowly migrate that information over, and then I can decommission my SharePoint 2003 software. So, because it could be the same machine, and oftentimes is. So let's talk about, now that we've looked at some of the factors for beginning the upgrade process, let's look at different approaches to upgrading to SharePoint 2007. An in-place upgrade, by the way, is on the same hardware as your V2 was, right? So that's pretty straightforward when we look at the in-place upgrade. The process is simple. It's cost-effective since it doesn't require additional hardware. When you run the in-place upgrade, the process upgrades your entire installation in a preset sequence. So after performing all the pre-upgrade steps that I showed you, the server admin installs Office SharePoint Server 2007 to the running server with Office SharePoint 2003 running, and chooses the in-place upgrade option. So once again, I mentioned, when you do this, you ultimately, let's go back here. It's not building for me. Try this again. The first one here is it runs and upgrades the configuration database and the central admin site. The next thing it does is any data specific to the server, such as search settings, is also updated. And then, more importantly, each site collection on the virtual server is updated next. So after all sites have been upgraded, the upgrade process ends. And this process will then be repeated on each server in the server farm environment. Once you've decided that use the admin confirms the upgrade is complete in this in-place upgrade, then you would uninstall SharePoint Portal Server 2003. Therefore, V2 is not available after the upgrade, right? So another disadvantage of this method is that your entire farm is offline during the upgrade as well. So just as with in-place upgrades, a gradual upgrade takes place on the same hardware that is used with your V2 installation of WSS and SharePoint Portal Server 2003. So let's look at that, because that's the one that we actually are doing right now. So a gradual upgrade allows you to control when upgrades take place for each individual site collection, and also allows you to continue running the previous version and the new version side by side on that same hardware. So when you perform a gradual upgrade, the starting and ending topologies have the same configuration. However, during and after the upgrade, the front-end web servers run both SharePoint Portal Server 2003 and Office SharePoint Server 2007. Any upgraded site collections that are run under Office SharePoint Server 2007, while site collections that cannot be upgraded or that were not selected for upgrade continue to run under 2003. So it's kind of a nice addition when we're looking at the whole infrastructure. So we got the 2.0 farm, 2.0 config and content, and we're going to look at, during and after the upgrade, the application servers run both SharePoint 2003 and SharePoint 2007. Upgraded portals consume 2007 shared services. So the portals that have not yet been or cannot be upgraded, consumed by the Portal Server 2003 shared services, additional services such as, and I'm going to do a webcast next month on this, additional services such as Excel services can be added after the upgrade. During and after upgrade, both SharePoint 2003 and SharePoint 2007 databases are available. Content for upgraded sites is stored in the 2007 databases. Content for sites that could not be upgraded or that you need to remain as to continue to be stored on 2003 databases the configuration databases exist for both 2007 and for 2003. So kind of to wrap, the gradual upgrade, really provides you several benefits. It allows the SharePoint administrators to break the upgrade into smaller parts, right? It reduces time any single user is impacted. It also uses existing hardware, and it allows you to revert to V2 if you want to go back, right? It's the undo, if you will, okay? Conversely, gradual upgrade uses extra SQL space. So, in WSS V2 host header mode is not supported in this scenario. So, another consideration with gradual upgrades is the URL redirect. So let's chat a little bit about that and what's happening there. So two sites can be, by the way, two sites can't share the same URL. So during the gradual upgrade, when you have both the old version and the new version of each site, you need two different domain URLs for each site. So during upgrade, a temporary domain URL is needed to host the original version of the site. The new version takes over the domain URL that points to the content prior to the upgrade, and the user requests will be routed to their content whether or not it has been upgraded. So that's kind of nice, right? When we look at the process during the upgrade to make this redirection possible, starts with creating a temporary URL. So when we look at the temporary URL domain for your original version of the site, so we're going to look at something like this, right? So when we're going to go ahead and make a temporary URL domain, with a temp.com on the end, for example. When you run upgrade, the upgrade process will ask you for the domain you created and then move the old version site to the temporary URL domain. And the new version site takes over the original URL domain. So there's a redirect is created automatically for each site collection to send requests for the original URL to the old site until the site is upgraded. So after each site has been upgraded, the redirect for that site is dropped. So we've got the little redirect here, and then eventually, once we move it over to the main domain name and with v3.0, then we can go ahead and get rid of the 2.0. So after all the sites have been upgraded, and you have deleted all of the old sites and completed the upgrade process, you can manually remove the temporary URL domain from the domain name service. During this process, browse access to the original URL will continue to work. So that's kind of nice. Well, now that we're going to let's just take a look at how the gradual upgrade process works. So I'm going to go into some more sharing here. I'm going to go into a couple more demos. I'm going to cover running the pre-upgrade scan tool. And this is where I want to make sure that you're 100% clear on what I'm doing here when I talk about upgrade. First upgrade scenario was going from SharePoint Server 2003 to SharePoint 2007. We basically are doing a gradual upgrade, so we kind of have those side by side on the same hardware. Now what I'm talking about in this gradual upgrade scenario and running the pre-upgrade scan tool is to see whether or not I'll be able to migrate or upgrade my current web farms and the farms that I currently have on my server that I had with 2003. Then we're going to talk about upgrading those sites, and then we'll perform some initial tasks. So let's go into my sharing here. And by the way, this is finished up here, so I'll go ahead and say close. It says, do you want to run the SharePoint Products and Technologies Configuration Wizard now? It has a checkbox there. That's going to be the next thing that it's going to ask you to do. So I like the fact that it does a pretty good job of walking you step by step through what you need to do next, because it says, in order to run this, you basically have to, before you start doing that, you have to run the pre-upgrade scan tool, which I mentioned earlier in the slide works. So when you install Microsoft Office SharePoint Server 2007, the pre-upgrade scan tool is automatically installed on your computer. This tool has to be run before starting the SharePoint Technologies and Configuration Wizard, or else the installation will fail. So before you run this wizard that pops up automatically after you've after you've installed SharePoint 2007, you must run this pre-scan tool. This tool is helpful for you as admins to identify possible issues that may cause problems with the upgrade process. And resolving, or at least being aware of the problems before the upgrade will make your migration go a lot smoother and have smaller impact on your organization. So we'll run the utility. We can run it from the command prompt, but I do want to show you real quick where this is located. So I'm going to go into Start menu here, and I'm going to show you as soon as I get where you refresh here. I'm going to go in there and show you where this is located. So if I go up to my C root into Program Files, so I'll collapse this here, Program Files, Common Files, down here to Microsoft Shared. We're going to go all the way down to the very bottom of Web Server Extensions, and that's going to be in bin bucket number 12 in the bin. This whole path, Program Files, Common Files, Microsoft Shared Web Server Extensions, 12 bin, has the pre-scan tool located within it. So as you can see here, there's pre-scan.executable. What we're going to do is we're going to run this from the command prompt. I'm a terrible typer. I'm just going to copy this path here, and I'm going to go up and I'm going to run this from the command prompt. And I'm going to go ahead and just change directory to this path. We'll type that in. Now I'm in that path. Now what I can do is I can go ahead and I can run pre-scan. So the syntax is pre-scan.exe, and then I'm going to do a /c because I want to get all of the information in the config, and I want to do what we refer to as a pre-upgrade, and we're going to put scan config, all in the same syntax. And of course, we're based on XML, so we're going to follow up with an XML and pipe that out to an XML file. Also, it's going to create a log file. So I put in prescan.exe/c pre-upgrade scan config.xml all, and you'll see that it just went from 0. It's going to run through from 0 to 100%. And then what I can do is I can go into the temp directory for this local administrator and go into the log file and check out and see if I've got any things that I need to be aware of. So as the utility is running, you'll be shown the process indicator, and when it has completed, you'll be shown of either a success or a failure on this program. It says that operation completed successfully. That's a good sign. I'll go ahead and just type exit and exit out of there. So what I want to show you now is if I simply go into I created a shortcut on the desktop that points to document settings, the local admin, and the Litware Inc. Domain. That's the name of my domain on my machine. Local settings in the temp file. If I scroll down here, you'll see that then today's date here, you'll see there's a pre-upgrade report. There's also, if I highlight this a little bit and open this up, you'll see that there's a log file here. So if I open this up, it'll show you that the scan had finished without failure, and I've checked and making sure the number of, if I have broken websites, number of pages scanned, there eventually should be some rich data in here. But as you can see, I'm just running this as a part of the demonstration of within my VPC. But that's, once again, you'd open this up into an XML report. It would tell me the custom values if I had any here. So that's one of the reports that you can get. There's also other different text reports you can get from the pre-scan tool. But you definitely want to run that prior to the log shows that you have information that's gathered from the pre-upgrade scan too. So you will be given a summary, once again, that I just showed you of a number of sites that were scanned, including ones that were skipped due to a previous scan. I did a previous scan on the site earlier. If you do receive a failure message, you want to look at the log to see the reason of the failure, and that it's provided at the top of the report that I just showed you. So now we can go ahead and go through this wizard here. By the way, there are some deployment papers and upgrade and migration white papers up on our website that walk you step by step on how to do this. And so you might want to set up a test lab and get those documents and kind of walk through it in maybe a virtualization environment to test it out like I'm doing here today. So we'll talk about upgrading sites. First thing I want to do in the next step of the upgrade process is to run the SharePoint Products and Technologies Configuration Wizard that you see here. This wizard takes you through several steps to get started with WSS 3.0. So it says here the following services may need to be started or reset during the configuration. That's IIS, the SharePoint admin service, and the timer service for SharePoint. I'm going to say choose yes to restart the services required to continue. I'm just going to say yes here. We're going to have to restart those eventually. So at this point, you can either connect to a server farm or you can create a new one. So after you configure your first front-end web server with SharePoint 2007, you select the option to connect to an existing farm and then connect to a farm you created. In this demonstration, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to say no, I want to create a new server farm. The next thing you see here is I'm going to put in the name of my database server, which is COSS01 is the name of my database server in SQL Server. I'm also, in all servers in the server farm, must share a configuration database. There's the default. SharePoint _config is the default there. And if you note that if you wish to reuse an existing database, the database must be empty if you want to do this. If the database is hosted on another server, you must enter the domain account. I'm going to go ahead and put in my password here. And so we'll go ahead and click OK. And now it's going to go through and it's going to make some changes. I believe there's about 11 different updates it makes during the configuration to the configuration wizard. So as this kicks off, you want to use, by the way, it's going to ask for a specific port number So for SharePoint Central Administration, you can enter a number on the Configure SharePoint Central Administration web application page, or you can accept the default port. I'm just going to go ahead and take the default port here. So here's my layout, configuration database server, Seattle OSS01, configuration database name, SharePoint _config. We want to host the central administration web application. So yes, web application URL is with the port number 33497, and NTLM is what we're going to use for authentication as our authentication provider. Once I click through there, there's 11 paths. It's going to go through here. It's going to scan. It's going to check whether we've ran the tool for pre-upgrade scan. See that? Checking just to whether or not we went through that particular step. That's by design. Development really wanted the end user and the administrator that's going to be upgrading and migrating to really make sure that they went through the appropriate steps prior to going through the upgrade scenario. So once we verified the settings are correct here, the wizard performs the next steps to configure your server. If you have a server farm with multiple servers, you must run the setup on each server to install the new binary files before running the configuration wizard and starting the upgrade process. So depending on your server farm configuration, where you're in the process of installing and configuring SharePoint 2007, you have three choices. If the only server is in your farm, then there's no other actions that are necessary. If you have other servers in your farm, you will not have and not yet run setup and the configuration wizard on the servers. You will stay at that point until you run setup and the configuration wizard on the other servers in the farm. When all of the other servers are at the same stage, you can return to this server and continue with the SharePoint Products and Technologies configuration wizard. If you've already run setup and the configuration wizards on all the servers in your server farm, and they are all at this stage, you can continue with the configuration wizard. Now, by the way, this upgrade process may take a while to complete, up to an hour. So, and then once so I'm going to let this run. I've got another VPC that's already done for the sake of time. I'm going to switch back to that. At this point, you can install any language template packs you need or for the new version. Since finishing this wizard is a lengthy process, once again, I'm going to switch over to another machine and perform the initial task. So I'm going to go ahead and delete this, go back out here, and go to my other VPC that I have that I put to give it a little siesta break by pausing it. So now I have, instead of an hour, waiting an hour, I actually have the finished product. You'll see SharePoint 3.0 Central Administrative link here on the desktop. So you'll most likely notice immediately, some of the changes to the new SharePoint Central Admin page. And one of the main design goals for the Central Admin page was the interface, right, and being able to use it and be able to navigate effectively. So let's just go in there and let's take a look at it. And we're going to perform some initial tasks. So the first thing I'm going to do when I go in here is show you just a couple of new additions to the interface, and then we'll go with some more initial tasks. I'm going to go ahead and type in Litware Inc. with my admin and my password. And let's just go in and take a look at this. Now, new security settings allow the recycling bin and the site setting options to only be available when a user is logged in with sufficient privileges. So, to take full advantage of the admin features and capabilities of SharePoint 2007, you should perform the following optional, administrative tasks using the SharePoint Central Administration. So administrative tasks are listed on the front page of the Central Admin console. This I'm just going to show you here in just a minute as soon as it opens up. These tasks are created by the system. Since we earlier on, you noticed that I performed a gradual upgrade with a complete install. We have the option of adding more servers to the farm, and you can see here when this opens up that we have the ability to add servers to the farm link and it will take us directly to the page where we can add more servers. So here's the central admin console. You'll see even if I click on recycling bin, we now have, if something gets deleted, we have the ability as an admin to go in and restore the selection or delete the selections, so that things don't, once we delete them, they go away forever. We actually have the ability to do restore there with recycling bin. You'll notice over here in this area with the administrative tasks, we've got 3 different types of tasks that haven't been started yet, and we're going to walk through a lot of these. The first one is the initial deployment. Add servers to the farm. We can assign services to different servers, and we can configure the farm's shared services. If we go down into farm topology, you'll see that we've got our server down here, SECOFS01, or I should say OSS01. We have SharePoint Services Database implemented here. So one thing we can do is we can go down and let's just click on the server in the farm topology. So SharePoint lets us know which services need to be enabled on the server. This is determined by the functions that the server will perform. So since we only have one server right now, we want our server to have the services enabled. And we'll tell SharePoint that the server will be a single server for a small server farm. So once this opens up, and we know we just have a single server web server farm, I'll go ahead and select that option. Now, if you're in a large farm environment, you would have several servers in your farm, and each one would be configured for its specific role. So right here, and it says services on this server, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to select a single server or web server for small server farms as my first option here. And as you can see, the services that are needed are listed here. So you'll notice, and by the way, the ones that are highlighted in yellow, and they've done a pretty good job around this. The ones that are highlighted here in yellow are the ones that need to be started, and we're going to walk through this list. The first one that started right out of the box during the upgrade and config is the central administration. You'll notice that that's been started already. But the next thing we need to enable is the Excel calculation services. This service performs calculations on Microsoft Excel spreadsheets. So we'll go ahead with the Excel calculation services. We go over here to the configurations of the start, and we go ahead and start that service. So you'll see that now the Excel calculation services has been started. And then the search service allows users to use the search features within the SharePoint site to search for documents and people and other content that may be on the site. So it also performs indexing for faster searches. So we definitely want to highlight that one, Office SharePoint Server Search. Let's go ahead and start that one up. You'll notice it gives a little checkbox there in blue. And then you'll see here, once I select the Office Server search settings, I got query and indexing. So I can go in here and say, if I want to go ahead and decide whether to have my server index content run, search queries or do both, I can select that. Here's the point of the default catalog location is stored in the Office Servers 12.0 Data Applications directory. And we also have down here in contacts and their email address, we can specify an email address that an external site administrator can be contacted if problems arise. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put in just the admin for this site here. So it'll be administrator@litwareinc.com. All right, and then we can go down to service account. So let's talk a little bit about the service account. The search engine will run using a specified account. If you choose to enter a user account, it must be a member of the admin group on the computer that is running the search service. We are going to choose to have the service run under network service account. So I can go ahead, I can click on predefined, and then here it's going to let me pick either a local service or a network service. I'm just going to go ahead and leave that as network service. Then I can scroll down here, and so I don't necessarily have to be the administrator here to run that service. I run it as a network service. Also, web front end and crawling, I can go and make changes here. If you're configuring the search service on a server that provides web services and renders web content, then click No Dedicated Web Front-End Computer for Crawling is the one that you would pick. If you're configuring the search engine on a server that's a standalone search server that does not provide web services and render web content, then you can click on the Use a Dedicated Web Front-End Computer for Crawling. Then in the select a web front-end computer area, click the computer that you want to use for crawling. In this case, I'm just going to go ahead and say no dedicated web front-end computer for crawling here. So what it's going to do is it's going to bring us back up to the Windows SharePoint Services area, where I can go ahead and now I want to go into my my search. So I can go into Windows SharePoint Services Help for Search. That's the last. You'll notice all the other ones are started other than the Windows SharePoint Services web application. So I'm going to go ahead and the next one on the list is this Windows SharePoint Services Help Search. So I'm going to go ahead and start that up. And one of the things that it drives me to is into the indexing content databases. So I can go ahead and what's nice about this is I can go in and I can say if we want the server to index all of our content databases, I can say take over all non-index content databases and select those if there was a list of them there. So I'll go ahead and just check that box. Also, we can go through service account. We can put in either local service or network service here. I'm going to go ahead, if we scroll back down here, we have the ability to put in and configure a username. We have the ability to go in and change our search database. We're going to keep the defaults here to the WSS search on this server. The recommended here is the Windows authentication, and the last piece here is the index scheduling. And for this, to configure index scheduling, we want to go ahead and I'm going to set this just for the purpose of the demonstration. I'm going to set this to daily. So indexing can occur at different interval times based on your company's needs. So you may want to, indexing to occur every 5 minutes, right? That's the default. If you have content that is updated frequently, or you may choose to only have the content indexed daily to save bandwidth and processing time, which is what I did. Then go ahead and select daily here. As you see, the default was every 5 minutes. And then finally, once we come back to this, we're going to go through and make one more change to the Windows SharePoint services. So I'll go in here to this last service that needs to be started, and that's the Windows SharePoint Services Web Applications. So I'll go ahead and say Start here. And so far, so good. So those are the things that you need to do to enable to get to the point where you get into central administration and start your appropriate services on the server. I'm going to go back to the desktop. And I'm going to talk a little bit now about outlining additional considerations. So now that we've looked at different upgrade approaches, let's look at some of the additional considerations for the upgrade process. Windows SharePoint Services uses a different strategy for upgrading a page, depending on whether or not it has been customized or is unghosted. So let's have a little discussion around this. When I talk about Windows SharePoint Services tracks whether a website was created through V2 or V3 site definition. So after the upgrade process, any reference to uncustomized or ghosted or front-end files are mapped to version 3 site definition. However, during this initial upgrade, customized pages on the website may still be stored in the database as V2 pages or as pages without a master or web part manager. At the time of parsing and rendering a page, Windows SharePoint Services determines which website the page is associated with, and then therefore whether ghosted files on the front-end web server are V2 or if they're V3. So since V2 pages are not directly compatible with version 3 standards, they run in a compatibility mode if the site has not been upgraded. So once an upgrade definition has been applied and the site upgraded, well, SharePoint assumes that the pages are fully compatible with ASP.NET 2.0. So this process has several implications with regards to customizations. In V2, customized pages in the database were parsed using SharePoint Services Parser, which had different tolerances than the ASP.NET parser. So as a result, if the pages contain malformed markup language, or it may have worked in V2, but it won't work in ASP.NET. So keep that in mind. So if you have front page customizations on your site, which is the first one here, as we look at basically these custom pages, they'll be kept during the upgrade. However, themes are not preserved. So with this in mind, you may decide not to keep these customizations based on the system because they won't match the rest of your site. Another one that you might want to pay particular attention to is the go ahead and click on this again, is the custom site definition. So you may choose to reset, and I'm going to do that in the demo in just a moment, but you may choose to reset the default site definition. This option exists to reset all pages during the upgrade and is available in site settings or within SharePoint Designer if you're using SharePoint Designer. Sites based on V2 site definitions should still work in V3. However, they generally won't take advantage of the V3 features. So therefore, you will probably want to convert your site definitions to map to the version 3 directory. You can gradually upgrade your site and take advantage of the new feature listings as you go on. The other one there is custom web parts. So in V2, web parts will continue to function in V3. So that's good news. Although they may require a few changes in their configuration, you must rebuild a custom web part if you use ASP.NET 1.1. Any of those tools or used APIs that have been removed in the new version. So you must, in that case, redeploy web parts if moving to a new server farm, and the web parts in the recycling bin, or and if you're not upgrading in place. So those are some things that you want to take into consideration. Now, if you have extensively customized your V2 sites, you need to determine how you want to handle your customized sites when you upgrade. Your approach will vary, obviously, with the different options that you have, based on the extent of the customizations, complexity of your site, to take that into consideration, and your goals for upgrading. All those things you want to take a look at. You can then, at that point, really make a good estimate of what you want to choose and how you want to keep the customizations. If you choose to keep your customizations, there are 3 ways to perform the upgrade. First, you can do an in-place upgrade and not reset the pages to the site definition and the site definition version as well. By default, an in-place upgrade preserves customizations and does not reset the site definition. If you decide to do a gradual upgrade, which is what I did in the demos today, you keep the site in the old environment, which will maintain the site with only the old functionality. With a gradual upgrade, you can also upgrade the site but not revert any pages to the template. This approach might result in an uneven look if you didn't customize every page. Something else to keep in mind is you may also choose to discard the customizations, whether you do an in-place or gradual upgrade. You can upgrade and then reset the entire website to use the site definition pages instead of your customizations. So this way you can start with new functionality and then decide whether to customize the site again. Site owners can reapply customizations when they review the upgraded sites. So another way to discard the customizations would be to start fresh with a new site in your new environment. And this approach works when you're dramatically redesigning your site and don't need to have either the structure or most of the content in the new site. And then finally, when we choose to do the customizations with either an in-place or a gradual upgrade, if with an in-place upgrade, you would not reset the pages to the site definition. By default, an in-place upgrade preserves the customizations and does not reset the pages to the site definition version. After upgrade, you can open the site, copy the customizations, reset the site definition, and then reapply the customizations to have both the new functionality and your customizations. So with a gradual upgrade, you would reset the customized page to the site definition pages. Then you would transfer your customizations from your old site to your new site using the SharePoint, compatible web page editor, such as SharePoint Designer 2007. So as we move into, looking at search, in Microsoft Office SharePoint Portal Server 2003, all search settings were stored in the registry, except for scopes and best bets, right, which were stored in the content database area. So when we look at, let's talk a little bit about search. During an in-place or gradual upgrade to Office SharePoint Server 2007, most search settings are upgraded. However, there's a few exceptions. Index files are not upgraded. Instead, they will be recreated when the server or farm is crawled for the first time. So after upgrading to Office SharePoint 2007, you must perform a full crawl on any content you want to index. The next thing is taking a look at scopes. Scopes are not upgraded. You must recreate search scopes after upgrading to Office SharePoint Server 2007. You must also recreate search alerts after upgrading to SharePoint 2007. And also, when we talk about any filters, word breakers, right, and thesaurus files that you have installed are not upgraded. These files are version dependent, so you must install new versions of these files as available. Because the search settings are stored in the registry and not in the database, if you choose a database migration approach to upgrade, none of the search settings are upgraded. You must manually reconfigure search in the new environment. If we're talking shared services, then you're basically, the gradual upgrade process is a little more complex and a little more complicated. Let's talk a little bit about that. So it pretty much follows the same outline as we just discussed with the whole search, how search is affected. But if you must repeat the steps for the parent portal and all of the child portals. So during the gradual upgrade of shared services, 2003 parent portal continues to provide services to sites that are configured to consume shared services, and the same user experience is retained. So that's kind of nice. There are two search crawls that are performed by default in shared services. With 2007 crawls, everything that was crawled by Portal Server 2003 and the SharePoint Portal Server 2003 searches in the search service continues to crawl the 2003 environment. It's important to note, though, if you got SharePoint Server 2003, it can crawl the SharePoint Portal Server 2003 sites as well, but the 2003 sites can't crawl the V3 Office SharePoint Server 2007 sites. So what does this all mean? Well, this means that you may be using up to twice the amount of network bandwidth for search crawls during the gradual upgrade with shared services. To minimize this impact, though, you can reduce the scope of either the V2 or the Office SharePoint 2007 crawls. And as with SharePoint 2003 sites are upgraded, you can delete their start addresses from SharePoint Portal Server search settings. User profile and audience data is modified in one location. So with SharePoint 2007, it's in one location, and it's pushed from 2007 to the 2003 Portal Server environment by way of a scheduled job run by the SharePoint Timer Service. When you upgrade the shared services, you should upgrade the parent portal first, and then any child portals after that. So you may need to upgrade the child portal first and then create a temporary shared services provider in SharePoint 2007 environment, and then upgrade the child portal and point, if you for a better term, point it to the temporary SSP for services. So when we look at, just do another demonstration here to kind of show you a little bit about this. We're going to be wrapping things up here in about 10 minutes. But I want to show you a little bit about handling those customizations. So I'm going to show you, once again, if you want to reset your site definitions, I'm going to show you how to do that. We're also going to create a shared service provider. So let's go into that demo. I'm going to go ahead and share out my desktop. So the first thing I want to do in the central admin console here is I'm going to go into over on the far right hand side of the VPC and the taxonomy here is the site action. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to click on that. It's going to give me a drop down here, and it's either going to let me create a new library list, web page, or website, or it's going to let me manage my site settings. That's where I want to go. Is I actually want to go into my site settings. Then you'll see here's all the information: user permissions, look and feel, galleries, site administration, site collection administration. Just a lot of information here to get to for site information. First thing I want to do is if you want to remove all customizations from a page, such as changes to web part zones or text added to a page, you can do so from the central admin page. Within site settings, you can use a feature that will reset the version to the page included in the site definition. So you can reset a single page within your site to use that version of the page included in your site definition, or if you want, you can reset all of the pages. But do me a favor, be cautious about this, right? Because when you reset the site definition version, you'll lose all the customizations made to the current version of the page. So no backup copy of the page will be made before the page is updated. And the new version, and there won't be a new version that's created during that time. But if you go under look and feel here, and you go down here and you click on reset to site definition, let's go ahead and click on that. Here it gives me the reset specific page site definition. I can go ahead and put in the page here, or I can go ahead and select reset all pages in this site to the site definition version. So I'm going to go ahead and so after performing this gradual upgrade, you'll need to determine whether any pages need to be reset to the site definition version. If you have pages that have been customized and do not show the new version's functionality, you should consider resetting the pages to the site definition to apply the new version look and functionality, and then reapplying your customization. So I'm just going to go ahead and reset these. Another thing we want to take a look at is application management. So when we talk about, let's talk about creating a shared service provider with shared services. They're an important feature in SharePoint 2007. They allow your organization to better utilize your resources, specifically SharePoint Search, which allows your users to have enterprise-wide information at their fingertips, and it's easily configurable by the administrator. So once you've upgraded to the newest version of SharePoint, one of the first tasks you want to perform is setting up the shared services for your farm. So I can go ahead and I click in Application Management here, and then over to the right-hand side, Office SharePoint Server Shared Services, and then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to say Create or Configure this farm's shared services. I'll go ahead and click on that. And here I get this manage this farm's shared services. I can go ahead and start up a new shared service by simply clicking on New SSP. It's going to open up this form here that I can fill out. I'll scroll to the top so you can see it. So it gives it an SSP name, Shared Services 1. That's obviously configurable. You can put whatever you want in there. And then once I go ahead and I can click on Create a New Web Application. You'll see this under here, Create a New Web Application. So I'll go ahead and click on that. What it's going to allow me to do is go ahead and create a new IIS website, a description, the port. It's also going to give me some security configuration information when I go and create a new web application. Then I scroll down. I can go ahead and use my load balanced URL based on my default setup here. I can create a new application pool, or I can use an existing application pool. And then when I scroll down here, I have the ability to either configure a new name in the application pool area. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to create and make this configurable by putting in my admin password here. So I'll go ahead and put in my admin rights, and I'll give it my password. so I can make changes. And then down here you'll see database name and authentication. That's fine. That's the same database server we've been using, WSS_content. And then down below we have a search server here, and we're going to go ahead and just put in the name of the server, which is Seattle OSS01. So I'll go ahead and say OK here. And it's going to take just a little bit of time here. We'll let this go through here in just a minute. And I'm going to come back. I'm going to come back to this. It'll take 1 second here to complete this. And so while that's running, I'm going to go back into the last part of the slide work and the last final demo, if you will. And then when I go back, actually, when I go back here, I'm going to create the Windows SharePoint Server Search Engine operations, if you will. So it takes a minute. We'll come back and we'll do the new shared service provider. Once we get the web application, we'll set up the new shared service provider. So let's talk a little bit about post-upgrade considerations. When we're looking at post-upgrade considerations, you want to delete unneeded V2 sites, right? This is a necessary step for the gradual upgrade in content database migration. So when the first thing you really want to take a look at is, get rid of and delete those unneeded 2.0 sites that are out there. By finalizing the upgrade, you'll remove the temporary data maintain about V2 environment. For gradual or in-place upgrades, this is a required step. Next, you'll want to do any post-upgrade data migration. And then finally, once you've got everything the way you need it, and you're happy with the environment, then you'll go ahead and you'll go and install 2.0 and go up to 3.0. So what I want to do is I want to go back into my demonstration sharing, and I'm going to show you the last demo, part of the demos here, performing a post-upgrade task, finalizing the upgrade. So let's go into the environment here. And as you can see, it's just finishing up the last operation. That's why I wanted to kind of pop into the final slides there so we could finish on time. Once again, I appreciate everybody that's tuning in today. It looks like people have really kind of stayed tuned today. That's good. I've only had a couple, 2, 3, 4 people drop off, so that's exciting to know that at least you're getting 1 or 2 things out of this session. The next thing I want to do, following up on the last demo with the new shared services provider, is we go down the list here and it gives it the SSP name. It also now here it's going to let me put in my service credentials. So I'm going to go ahead and put in my password one more time here. Then I also want to look at specifically when I come down to the list here of the index server, what index server I'm going to use. I want to use the same index server that I have on this system. And then down here, if I wanted to enable SSL, I could do that. But I'm just going to go ahead and leave that disabled for now. I'll go ahead and click OK here. So we're going to go through and upon successful creation of the SSP, the success page hopefully will appear here. And then if you're using shared services before your upgrade, you'll want to go into the shared service administration page and review your services and make any changes that are necessary. And then the last thing we're going to do once this is done is finalize the upgrade. So after upgrading a site collection using the gradual upgrade option, which I used, you should keep the old site online for a period of time so that the site can be reviewed and verified. And then during this time, both the IT pro, and the site owners, the designers, the developers can review the site and have a chance to compare the old site to the new site and look for any discrepancies or errors. For example, you might want to check all hyperlinks to make sure they're all still functioning. You will also want to copy missing components, if any, from the old site to the new site using SharePoint compatible web page editors like SharePoint Designer. And then if web points don't function properly, you will want to either update or redeploy them. As a last result, it may be necessary to revert back to V2 site while you make the adjustments needed to make your site perform correctly in your V3 environment. That's why we do a gradual upgrade in this scenario. One of the final upgrade steps is to finalize your upgrade in central administration site. You should only finalize the upgrade when you know that all the components have been upgraded, right? This process will remove the connection to the previous version of SharePoint and clean up any temporary files. So once you finalize the upgrade, it is not possible to return to the farm upgrade process without restoring from the original farm backup and restarting the entire upgrade process again. So it's kind of like, you want to make sure all of your checks and balances are covered before you press the magic button to finalize your upgrade. So that's where I'm gonna end is this next demo here. As soon as this refreshes, hopefully I get a success back on this. It does take a few minutes to run through here, and then I'm just about out of time. I think I'm right on the mark here. This last demo takes about 1 minute, so I'll show you that, and then I'll go in and hand it back over to Craig in a minute and take a couple questions. So hopefully this was beneficial for you. I look forward to also doing the launch that's coming up for Windows Vista, Office 2007, and Exchange 2007. I'll be doing Birmingham, I'll be doing Orlando, Florida, Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and Miami, Florida for those big launches coming up. And if you do attend one of our live events, by the way, we're going to be giving you a free copy of Office 2007 Professional. So hopefully everybody will find the nearest live event in your geographical location and attend those. So once again, I know we've got Vista and Office deployment. We've got a lot of content to cover in 4 hours. We go from 8 in the morning until noon, so hopefully we'll see everybody there. Okay, well that looks like that was a success. So far so good. The last and quick demo, I'm gonna hand it back over to Craig. Is if I click on operations here, I'm just going to go into down at the bottom here, we got the upgrade and migration area. What I can do is I can go up to my farm upgrade status, and it's just going to give me a quick status over on the right hand side of the taxonomy of whether things are okay or have failed. Looks like everything is working properly in my environment, so that looks good. I'll go ahead and click back to operations, and then I'm going to go into the same silo, if you will, the same bucket down here, and I'm going to finalize the upgrade. So I'll go ahead and click on that. And by the way, you might want to take a note here. It says this page shown as an overview of the known upgrade actions to be completed and allows you to indicate the upgrade that the upgrade is finished. Final upgrade should be used when all components have been upgraded. This process will remove the connection to the previous version of SharePoint and clean up any of the temporary data. Once you choose to finalize the upgrade, it is not possible to return to the farm upgrade process without restoring the original farm backup and restarting the entire upgrade process again. Then it tells you that again in the dialog. Are you certain? Are you for sure that you want to finish the upgrade? Yeah, I do. All right, folks, that's it. That concludes this broadcast, webcast. A little bit of a summary here. I did talk about, why should you upgrade? We have a lot of reasons why you should upgrade. I covered that list at the very beginning of the session. There's lots of several advantages over the previous version to provide a better experience for administrators and users. And determining the approach, once you've recognized the benefits of upgrading, you decide to start the process, you want to determine what's your best upgrade approach. And then in any other considerations by examining your environment, including any customizations, shared services that are being used, you can weigh the benefits and the trade-offs for each of the approach. Whether it's an in-place upgrade, gradual upgrade, or even a content database migration. So with that, I really appreciate everybody tuning in today. If you want more information on this webcast, this is DSK-104 on our Microsoft.com TechNet website. With that, ladies and gentlemen, thanks for attending this upgrade migration to SharePoint Server 2007. Back to you, Craig.
Fantastic. Thank you, Blaine, for that plethora of very good information. I would like to share some additional resources with our crowd before we leave about today's TechNet program. We will begin our question and answer session in just a moment. Once again, feel free to ask a question at any point by simply typing a question into the field next to the Ask button and then clicking that Ask button. As I mentioned earlier, to view a replay of today's live event, or to register for upcoming webcasts, please visit www.microsoft.com/webcast. And as there was quite a bit of information mentioned here, would be good to take a follow-up and look back at the streaming media replay and the downloadable WMV file, which will be available within 24 hours. We are going to be providing a survey for today's event in just a moment. And not only would we like your feedback and comments to help us create better webcasts, but there is a possibility of winning a prize for taking some time to complete that survey, which I will get into in just a moment. Again, your feedback is greatly appreciated. If you've got an idea for a webcast or you'd like to see some specific content developed, point your browser where I just pointed that arrow, and we at the webcast team will do all that we can to create a webcast around that topic. As I just mentioned, I am going to be providing a survey for today's event, and I encourage you to fill out this survey because by attending this webcast and going ahead and submitting the evaluation, you will be entered to win a 30 gigabyte Zoom digital media player. So for a few moments of your time, you have an opportunity to win quite a nice little gift. As I mentioned, here is the survey for today's event. Please follow the links that are provided in your interface and just take a couple moments to complete today's webcast evaluation. Your comments are very valuable to us. Now, Blaine, it looks like you do have a few questions, so would you like to answer them on the floor, or is it easier for you to type out your responses?
Well, I think I'll take one or two. There's like, I got about eight questions in here. That was 8, by the way, not 80. I got about 8 questions in the queue. I think 3 or 4 of them are right on the same page of wanting to know information about, I talked about migration, I talked about in-place upgrade, and I talked about gradual upgrade. But people want to know about hardware. If they're going from SharePoint Portal Server 2003 to Office SharePoint Portal Server 2007, and there's 2 different boxes. A lot of people want to decommission the old box and use the new hardware on the new box with 2007. You can do that in your environment. There is an actual mechanism in which we can install the software to connect to each other, where you can have running side by side, but on 2 separate boxes, SharePoint 2003 and 2007. So that can be done. That is possible. And then eventually, when you've got everything in your farm and your server environment running on 2007, then you know that everything is working properly, then you can eventually go over and decommission your Portal Server 2003. So I had about 3 or 4 questions on, are there any, when you're covering migration, what happens when you go from, say, one box to another box? So that is doable. Another suggestion that you could do there would be to, and depending on the OS and the underlying architecture you're using there, is to simply image or create an image that you could load down to your new hardware and then do an in-place upgrade 2007 on top of that, instead of doing a full install of 2007 and creating everything from scratch. So there are ways to kind of pick the process you want to take. So I encourage you to go up to our website to pull down the white papers for deploying SharePoint 2007. I'm getting a little tired. It's Friday, TGIF. But another question that I had was around SBS. I'm not an SBS guru by any means, but I would assume that we will be able to upgrade to SharePoint Services 3.0 and SharePoint Server 2007 on that in that infrastructure in a single domain environment. Let's see. Somebody wanted me to send them the VPC that I used in the demonstration. I don't know if the VPCs are available quite yet for public use, but I know that is coming. That came from AG. I don't know if this is available to the customers yet, but I know that we've made plans to make our VPCs available with demo script for our attendees and customers to use. So if you'd like, I'm not afraid to put my email address right up front. That's blainbar, BLAINBAR, @Microsoft.com. We got the survey up right now, so I'm not going to go ahead and type that up because it'll kick you out of the survey. By the way, surveys are important. Make sure that you give us your feedback. I would really appreciate that. It's a scale from 1 to 9, 1 being, worse than Millennium, and 9 being, it was a good webcast. I met your expectations. You learned a couple things. So with that, Craig, I think I'm about out of time. Any of the other questions, I'll try to do my best at answering them online here. ladies and gentlemen, thanks once again for attending this webcast.
Great, great. Thank you. I would like to mention on something that Blaine mentioned earlier about getting some free software by going to one of the launch events coming to a city near you. To find some more information about that, you can go to your control panel pane, and it's actually the bottom link. You can click on Attend a Key Launch Event and get free software, which everybody loves free things. So go ahead and click on that and get some more information about it. I would like to also extend a very special thank you to Blaine Barton for his presentation today. I would also like to thank everyone for attending today's webcast. Ladies and gentlemen, that is going to conclude our TechNet program for today. Thank you for joining us, and everyone have a happy and healthy weekend. You may now disconnect from the audio portion of this conference.